Once again, guys, be sure to stick around for the entirety of the video as I give most of my insights towards the end of the lesson. All right, with that being said, let's jump in. Alright, so let's talk about variables. So variables are pieces of information stored in the computer's memory. So we can think of it like information that we can retrieve and we can grab that data whenever we need it. They should be labeled with meaningful names, something that is easily understood by yourself or anyone else reading your code. So PHP has some rules for variables. One of those rules is called an identifier. The identifier for PHP's variables is a $sign. This should be added in front of the name of the variable, and the name of the variable can start with a letter or an underscore, but it cannot start with a number. So for instance, this is valid. So the current editor I'm using here is squawking because I haven't initialized this variable. And what that means is we can place an equal signs here and give it a value. So once this is done, this is called initializing the variable, but we'll get back to this in a moment. Variables can have or begin with an underscore. This is also valid. We can also declare a variable like this. This is also valid. So I want to point out one thing right here. Even though this says name, and we'll do another one down here, these two here, name with lowercase and name with uppercase, are actually two different variables because variables in PHP are case sensitive. Even though they're using the same name, they're not the same. Let's take a look at some variables that are invalid. So this is invalid because in PHP, variables, they cannot start with a number. Okay, so there's one more thing. In PHP, we can't assign a variable with the name this. This is a reserved word or a special variable. So you can't assign a value, like we cannot assign a value to the word this. So some key things to remember. The $sign is called the identifier, and the characters following the $sign is called the variable name. Unlike other programming languages, in PHP, you do not have to define a data type for variables. So we know that creating variables in PHP is called declaring the variables or giving the variables a declaration. Unlike other programming languages, there is no keyword to declare a variable. So this is what's called a loosely typed language. So let's declare a variable. I'm going to call this one week. So we use the identifier, we gave it a name, and then we're going to use what's called the assignment operator or the equal sign. We're going to give it a value, and we're going to use a string. So I'm just going to wrap this in double quotes, and we're going to say Monday. Let's make this make more sense. We'll say weekday, and we'll make it Monday. And then we put the semicolon at the very end for the end of statement. We could do something like this and type in the word day, initialize it. Notice that this data type is a number. And let's do one more. I'm going to say money, and I'm going to give it a value. This is also a numeric value. This one's known as a floating point number. PHP also has 8 data types, and we'll get into data types a little bit later, but I'm going to throw in one more variable here. The door is open. I'm going to set that to false. Notice what I did here with the variable name. There are numerous conventions for naming variable names. So this is what's called camel case, because each new word, except for the first one, starts with a capital letter. I'm just going to make a comment up here. I'm going to create another variable down here. In this case, I'm going to say it's an empty array. This can also be written like this. This one uses the array function, and they're pretty much identical. In addition, variables can also be assigned objects, and we'll get to this a little bit later on. So this seems a little weird or confusing, don't worry about it. These are what's called collections or compound types. Oh, I almost forgot, this is illegal. You cannot do this. You cannot start a variable with a special character. These are also invalid. So there are some key things to remember about variables. The $sign or the identifier should be at the very front of the variable name. Variables must start with a letter or an underscore. They can't start with a special character, and they can't use keywords or reserved words such as this. So variables can contain letters, numbers, and characters. And do note that variables are also case sensitive. So the word name or the variable name and this one name, they are not the same. I'll just throw one more in here. These 3 variables are not the same. You will not be able to call the data that is within these 3 variables by using either one of these names. They will hold different values. For now, we kind of touched on some of the data types, which I'll cover thoroughly in another lesson. But for now, there are strings, there are numbers, floating point numbers, and these are what's called booleans. So either true or false. The 4 are called scalar types. Variables can also be assigned arrays or objects, and these are called compound types or collections. The equal sign is the assignment operator. The characters to the right of the equal sign is the value to be assigned. So this array is assigned to this variable. This object is assigned to this variable. And they must end with the end statement or semicolon. Okay, there's one last thing I want to show you. Variables will store the value of the most recent assignment. For instance, if I say greeting and I say hello, and then I use greeting again, and then I assign a different string value, and I say world, and we were to echo out the value, let's jump to our browser, you will see that the last value the variable retrieves or displays will be world, not the first value, as we've seen over here. Okay, there's one more confusing thing. Let's remove this, and then we'll add $2, greeting, and we'll assign it Kevin. Now, instead of wrapping these in double quotes, we're going to wrap these in single quotes. And we're going to echo out greeting like this. And we're going to check what this says inside of our browser. And you can see that this says hello Kevin. And this may be a bit confusing. What's happening here is the value of the first variable, hello, is being used as a variable by using the $2. Now, sometimes you may want to be able to have variable names. That sounds a little confusing when you think about it. It's basically a variable name that can be set and used dynamically. So a normal variable set here, and a variable or dynamic variable will take the value of the variable up here and treat that as the name of the variable down here. So hello is being used as the name of the variable using the $2. We could also echo it out like this and it'll be the exact same thing. So using double quotes this time around, we'll say greeting, we'll use this $, and then we'll place the greeting variable inside of here. And then we can check this in our browser, and it's the exact same thing. In the beginning, you're not going to commonly reach for this, but as you get more to PHP, there may be a scenario where you need to use a variable or a dynamic variable. In the next upcoming lessons, we'll take a look at variable scope, like global scope, local, and static scopes. But for now, this is all you'll need to know about variables when it comes to initializing them and declaring them. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Just to let you know, there will be more lessons in this series, so don't forget to click the notification bell and get informed when the new lessons in this series drops. Thanks again, guys. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you guys next time.